Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Football Wiggle Trivet, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description, or you can simply search Moogly Blog Football Wiggle Trivet, and it should pop right up. To make this pattern, we'll be using a USH 5mm crochet hook and 175 total yards of Lily Sugar and Cream. That means we'll need 2 balls of the warm brown and less than 1 ball of the white. You'll also need your standard crochet supplies, stitch markers, a yarn needle, and scissors. The finished football trivet is approximately 6.75 inches wide and 13 inches long after blocking. As you can see here, I chose not to add the white stripes on either end. I went more NFL style. However, if you'd like to add the white stripes, instructions for that are included in the pattern. First, let's take a look at the finished Football Wiggle Trivet. This is made with the wiggle crochet technique, and that means this pattern's made first with a mesh at the bottom. These are double crochets and chain 1 spaces. So every time you start a row of the mesh, if you start with a chain 4, it counts as a double crochet and chain 1. Then into this mesh, we work those wiggle stitches. First, we work the laces, first the long one, then the short ones that go across, and then we fill in the rest of the space with those wiggles. If you wanted to add white stripes, you would simply replace the brown yarn with white for the 4th row in from each end, and then you'll have those stripes as well. Anytime you have a chain 2 and a double crochet in the mesh, that will count as a double crochet 2 together. And when you're making those wiggle stitches, please note that you're only going to work around the mesh double crochet stitches and the inner halves of any double crochet 2 togethers. We're not working into the chain 1 spaces or the edging. We only work around the double crochet stitches that do not have an edging stitch worked around them. However, those laces and wiggles are always added, as you can see, from the right side of the football mesh. So let's go ahead and get started on our Football Wiggle Trivet. So we begin our Football Wiggle Trivet by making the mesh, and we're going to be using color A, or our warm brown. So we begin with a chain of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and here I'm going to pause for just a moment so I can put this stitch marker in the 8th chain, the one I just made. We'll come back to this when it's time to make the edging. There we go. Get my hook back in there, and we have 2 more chains to make. 1 and 2. Then we're ready to begin stitching into our chains. We're going to skip the chain closest to the hook, that will be our turning chain, and work a single crochet into the chain right after that. There we are. Then we're going to begin the repeat that we do 3 times. We chain 1, skip the next stitch, and double crochet in the stitch after that. In this case, we'll be skipping the one with the stitch marker in it. I like to work into the back hump of the chains, as you can see here, but you can work under the top 2 loops if you prefer. This is just a personal preference. I like the way it is then when I work back into it when I do the edging. So that was our first repeat. Let's do our second one. I've got my chain 1. We're going to skip the next chain and double crochet in the chain after that. I'm working a little bit tightly here because we want a good firm fabric for our wiggle trivet. And we've got 1 more repeat. We chain 1, skip the next chain, and double crochet in the chain after that. That leaves us with 2 chains left, so we're going to chain 1 again, skip the next chain, and single crochet in the very last chain. And that is what your mesh should look like after row 1. Now we're ready to begin row 2, which is just the same as rows 3, 4, and 5. All of these rows begin with a chain 4 that will count as our double crochet and chain 1. Then we continue this row by double crocheting in the first stitch, there we are, and then we begin our repeat. We chain 1, skip the next chain space, and double crochet in the next stitch. Repeat this all the way across. So I've already done my chain 1, I'm going to double crochet in each stitch, So we're not working into the chain spaces here. We want to create a really open mesh. So that was the first one. We'll do that again. Chain 1, double crochet in the next stitch. Chain 1, double crochet in the next stitch. Chain 1, double crochet in the last stitch. In this case, it'll be that last single crochet. In continuing rows, it will be the top of the chain 3 from the chain 4. So we've double crocheted in that last stitch, but we're not quite done yet. We still also need to chain 1 and double crochet in that same stitch again. That way we've got an increase on this end, just as we did on the first end. There we go, and that's what your mesh should look like after row 2. And here we are after row 5 with a total of 13 double crochets in that last row. As you can see, they were just like row 2, an increase at the beginning and an increase at the end. So now we're ready for rows 6 through 12, which are again all the same, but for these we're going to be working even, no more increases. We still start with a chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and again, that will count as a double crochet and chain 1. Then we're going to skip the next chain space and just double crochet in each stitch. That is our repeat. Of course, we had our chain 1 built in for that one, but now we need to chain 1. There we are, and double crochet in the next stitch. We simply do that all the way across. No more increases, so still just 13 double crochets in each row. So continue doing that until you've worked through row 12. And this is what your Football Wiggle Trivet mesh should look like after 12 rows. You can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 where we were increasing, and now 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 where we were all just working even. We still only have 13 double crochets in each of these rows. But now we're ready for rows 13, 14, 15, and 16, where we're all going to be doing those decreases to sort of mimic what we did down here. Now we need a decrease. So I'll get my hook back in my loop here, and we're going to start all of these rows with a chain 2. 1, 2. Then, don't forget to turn, of course. What we're going to do is skip that chain space and double crochet in the next stitch. We're doing this and we're counting this as a double crochet 2 together. So when you work back across in the next row, you'll simply work into the top of this double crochet and ignore the chain 2 hanging out there on the side. So let's finish that stitch right there. There we go. So like I say, as you come back, you'd work into the top of that chain 2, and this will function as a double crochet 2 together. After that, until we get to those last 2 double crochets, of course, it's exactly the same as before. We want to chain 1, skip that chain space, and double crochet in each stitch. So I'll see you as we get closer to the end here of row 13. So we've gotten nearly to the end of row 13. I've got my chain 1 and I've got 2 double crochets just left here at the end. It's actually a chain 4, but remember that first chain 3 there counts as our double crochet. So now we actually are going to go ahead and work a double crochet 2 together. So we'll yarn over and go into the first one of those. Stop when there are 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over again, go into the top of that third chain. There we are. Yarn over. And then when we're down to 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3. So then we've got a double crochet 2 together at the end, and we started with a chain 2 and double crochet that will count as a double crochet 2 together at the beginning. So this is what it should look like at the end of row 13. Just repeat that for rows 14, 15, and 16, and you will continue to decrease by 2 stitches in every row. And this is what your mesh should look like after row 16. You can see here we've continued our decreases, so now we've got a decrease, 3 double crochets, and another decrease on the end. We have 1 more row to make for our mesh before we work the edging. We want to mimic a little bit of what we did in our first row. So now we're going to start with a chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the first stitch, so right in the top of that double crochet 2 together there. Then we are going to do a repeat 3 times where we chain 1, skip the next chain space, and double crochet in the stitch after that. So very similar to what we were doing before. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next, So each one of these standalone double crochets will get a double crochet worked into it. There we are. Want to make sure to chain one again. And then in that very last stitch, so really the top of that double crochet, we're going to go ahead and put our final single crochet for row 17. So now we've rounded that off just a little bit and we're ready to make the mesh edging. So now we're ready to add the mesh edging, which will really define the football shape of our trivet. We're going to, well, I like to chain one and then turn, but you can turn and then chain one, however you like to do it. But now the side that we're working our mesh edging from is going to be the right side of our mesh. So this is the side we want to be looking at when we add all our wiggles and laces. So to begin the edging round, we're going to start by working a single crochet in that first chain space. We're going to skip over that first stitch. Go right into that chain space and work a single crochet. And then if you'd like, you can add a stitch marker to this very first stitch to help you find it as you come back around. There we go. Then we work a half double crochet in the next stitch. Pull that on through. There we go. A double crochet in the next chain space. A treble crochet in the next stitch, so we yarn over twice. Go right in there. And work off 2 loops at a time, just like a double crochet. A little bit taller. There we are. Double crochet in the next chain space. Half double crochet in the next stitch. And single crochet in the next chain space. After this, we're simply going to single crochet evenly around until we get to the marked chain space down here. Remember where we put that very first stitch marker in there? This is where it's finally going to come in handy. But in the meantime, you simply work evenly all the way around. Usually I like to put 2 single crochets around each one of these double crochets. And that's another note. Don't bother trying to break into the middle of these stitches to put those edge stitches in. As we work around them here, I'm just going to go ahead and sort of single crochet in that single crochet right there. But then as I come down here to this double crochet or chain 2, whatever it is right here, I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way around that outer stitch. Just like so. I'm just going to go right on in there. I'm not going to try and split the stitch and be fancy that way at all. We're not going to be working back into these stitches at all, and we want a really nice firm edging here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my stitches right around the whole post rather than trying to split it up in any way. I do kind of, for these decreases, I put the top one sort of in there, but after that, I just work right around those double crochets. So just continue working your way evenly down the side of the football until you get to that marked stitch. So as you can see, I simply worked 2 single crochets around the outermost stitch at the end of every row until I've gotten back down here to that marked space. Now, we're going to make sure to work a single crochet in that marked chain space. So we can go ahead and take that stitch marker out, set it aside for later. There we go. And then we begin the portion marked with the asterisks. We half double crochet in the next stitch right there. And of course, you're going to be working into those unused loops at the bottom of your chain there. There we go. Then we are going to double crochet in the next chain space. Treble crochet in the next stitch. So that one right there. Whatever loops you left behind, go ahead and work into those. There we go. Double crochet in the next chain space. Half double crochet in the next stitch. And then we can simply continue to single crochet evenly up the other side until we get to this end where we can join with our first single crochet of the edging and finish off. Then we'll be ready to add our laces. So here you can see the finished mesh. It's got a little bit of a wonky shape, but you can see it looks a little bit like a football, and we'll block it when it's all done to really emphasize that shape as well. So what we want to do now is I'm going to turn it around this way. So I'm working, yep, this is the direction of stitches. So we had row 1 down here, row 17 up here. And now I want to count up from that first row and find row 6. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is also the row where we started working evenly. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be making the center lace. So we want to count up to row 6 and find the center stitch. So we can just we know there's 13, so it should be the 7th one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that right there is our goal stitch. This is where we're going to be starting. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little stitch marker right on that stitch so I know exactly where it is. Then we're going to pull up our color A, our white, and now we are going to be working this way. We're going to be putting 3 double crochets around that post, 3 double crochets around that post, again, 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 for a total of rows 6 through 12. So that would be 7 rows. So we know this is the one we're going to start with. So we want to start by joining with a double crochet. So to do that, we're going to take the end of our yarn, hold it with our non-hook fingers in our hook hand, yarn over twice. There we are. And then we see that post we're aiming for, so we're just going to go right around it. Kind of like a front post stitch, but we're just going to go right around it at the base of this post right there. Yarn over and pull up our loop. Yarn over and pull through 2. And yarn over and pull through that loop and behind the yarn over that we're still holding on to. At this point, you can go ahead and let that end drop. Now, I know where I am, so I'm going to go ahead, get that stitch marker on out of the way here, and I want to put 2 more double crochets around that same post, working towards the top of the stitch. So we just go right around that post again there. 1, 2. So now we have a total, or we will here in just a moment, of 3 double crochets worked around that post right there. So now, as I say, we're going to continue working up that same post of every row. So we want to make sure that we work around the correct post. If you need to kind of pull it out and look, there's the first one we did, so there's the next one we're going to. So we just go right to that next post in the next row, the same center post, and work 3 double crochets right around that one. There we go. And 2 and 3. And then the same thing. We want to lay it out. Find the next post of the next row up. Same middle post though. There we are. And then we can work 3 double crochets right around that post. So continue doing that through row 12. So this is what it should look like when you've finished the long lace. You can see here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections worked in rows 6 through 12. And at the end, of course, you can just break your yarn and finish that one off. You can weave in your ends at this point if you'd like, or you can leave them for later. Next, we're going to add the short laces. Now, when we make our fill-in wiggles with the brown, as well as when we made the long line here, we only work around the post of those stitches. However, for these short laces, we're going to be working around the chain spaces in between instead, so we can go this direction. So what we want to do is join with a double crochet in the 5th chain space of row 6. So we know this is row 6 here that we worked our first set of stitches around. So we need to find the 5th chain space. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one right here. So the chain space before the chain space before our long line. And this is what we want to join to again with a double crochet. So let's see here. We will yarn over twice, double crochet right around that chain space. You can go ahead and just fold your mesh, make it easy for you. There we go. Then we're going to double crochet again in that chain space. And then we're just going to jump right over that post, work 2 double crochets in the next chain space. There we are. Need to pull up a little bit more yarn. Don't like to keep too much tension on it there. There we go. And then we're simply going to just jump over that long line as if it wasn't there. Push it on up over to the side there. And we want to work 2 double crochets into the chain 1 space on the other side. So there's 1, 2. And then finally 2 more in the next chain space. Just follow that row right along. 1 and 2. There we are. Then we can break our yarn and finish off that stitch. There we are. So we'll lay that out and take a look at it here. You can see right there is our long line. And now it's a little bit wiggly, so I like to kind of straighten it out a little bit here. There is our first short lace. And we're just going to continue to do that right across the next few rows. We did that one on row 6, so we want to do it across row 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So we have that last little bit there hanging out on both ends. But you just repeat exactly what we did until we have all of those short laces made. So now all that's left is to add the fill-in wiggles going back to color A. You can see here we're back down at row 1, and this is where we've joined them. I joined them exactly with the same technique that I used when I made the laces, working just around the posts. We start at the bottom of the first double crochet, and now instead of 3, we're going to work 5 double crochets total. So join with 1 and then 4 more around the first one, working up that post. But then I really wanted to point out how this works. We go to the next post in the row and we work down that post. We come to the next post, we work up that post, which allows us to jump to the bottom of the first post of the second row. Working back the opposite direction, we go up that post, down, up, down, and then up, which brings us right here. We come right to the top of that row. We can jump to the next one and just keep working up and down each of those posts. Again, when we're making these wiggles, we're not working into those chain 1 spaces at all. We're just working around the posts themselves of those double crochets. So you can see that happening a little bit better here from behind. You can see I've just worked around those posts. Again, 5 double crochets around each double crochet post. Now, I did mention if you want to add stripes, you can change colors. You don't have to do it all in warm brown, of course. And I would recommend putting those around row 4. Just go ahead and replace the brown wiggles with white wiggles for row 4 here and the 4th row from the end. Those are both noted in the pattern. So let's go ahead and start making our wiggles together. So let's come back to our demo piece here. I'm going to start and I want to look for that first double crochet of the first row. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to join with a double crochet, get my 2 yarn overs there. And I like to just kind of turn my whole project here so I can really go under it in a comfortable way for me. But we want to start at the bottom of the post and work our way up. So there's our first one, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there we've worked up our first post. So then we go to the next post of that row and we work our way down. So we're just going to fully turn our project so that we can do that here. We're going to be moving our mesh back and forth, and that is totally fine. That's exactly how this works. So now we're working from the top of that post. So I want to kind of snug that one right at the top. And then I'm just going to work my way on down. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. Let's look at that. Try and get the hook out of the way here. So we've gone up one post, down the next. So now we're at the bottom. So we find that third post in row 1 and we're going to work our way up. So let's do that together here. Find the bottom one there. I just like to pinch it on up, make it easier for myself. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that right there is our row 1 of wiggles. And that allows us to just jump, as I said, right on up to row 2. We can pull that apart a little bit there so you can see that really well. There's that first double crochet in row 2. Now I'm calling it the first double crochet because it's the first one without an edging worked into it. We're not going to work around any of these edging stitches. We want to leave those on the edge. So we just want to look at the double crochets of our mesh itself. So we're going to continue right on up. So then we can jump right to row 2. Let's make a couple there so you can see how that works. There we are. We're right in the right place for it. We just have to skip the top of that row there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there we go, and 5. Okay, so let's take another look at that here. Get the hook on out of the way. So you can see there's that little travel up there, but now we can find that next stitch of row 2, and we'll go down and then up and then down and then up. And that brings us right up to row 3. We jump over here, up, then down, up, then down, up, then down. We always end going up on each row so that we can jump to the next row and work back and forth across. Now, as you can see, we're going to have to do something a little different when we get to the laces. Let's take another look at the finished wiggle trivet and how it works up towards those laces. We work across row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, and of course in row 6, we're going to come up to where that long lace is worked. So we're simply going to go up that first stitch, down, and up, to go ahead and break our yarn. And then you want to rejoin your yarn on the other side of the long lace at the bottom. So you always want to rejoin at the bottom of that next stitch on the other side. Work your way up here. That will allow you to jump to the next row. We're going to end there, rejoin at the bottom of that stitch, and wiggle on across. So it's the exact same pattern. We just have to break when we get to the bottom, when we get to the one side, and then rejoin from the bottom of the post on the other side. Then, as you work your way up and you get past that last lace, you can continue on till you get to the end. And that's how to crochet the Football Wiggle Trivet. Once again, this is a free pattern found on mooglyblog.com. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.